Yeah, I think it's like cowardly, to be honest, because they didn't speak about him like this when he was here. If you ask anybody that played against him, they all say he was the best player in the league. He was the most terrifying person to go.
Paul Pierce sat on a podcast and made a statement that instantly set the basketball world on fire. He claimed Kobe Bryant was never truly the face of the NBA. Think about that for a second. The same Kobe Bryant who won 5 championships. The same player who spent over a decade outworking, outlasting, and outperforming nearly everybody in the league, including Pierce himself. And now, years later, Pierce looked into a camera and said Kobe never represented the league at the highest level. What made the comment hit even harder was the timing. Not when Kobe was alive. Not when Kobe could answer directly. Not when Kobe could walk into a room and instantly shift all the attention away from everybody else. Now that's why so many fans saw the comment as more than just a basketball opinion. But then something unexpected happened. Jayson Tatum, a current Boston Celtic, someone connected to the same franchise Pierce represents, went on the Pivot podcast and pushed back against the disrespect in a way almost no active NBA player ever does publicly, and the word Tatum chose wasn't disrespectful. It wasn't unfair. It was something even harsher.
Yeah, I think it's like cowardly, to be honest, because they didn't speak about him like this when he was here.
Cowardly. That's the word Jayson Tatum reportedly used when talking about comments made by Paul Pierce, one of the biggest names in Boston Celtics history. Think about how serious that is, the current Celtic publicly calling out a franchise legend over comments about Kobe Bryant. Not wrong. Not disrespectful. Cowardly, because in Tatum's eyes, criticizing Kobe like that after he's gone hits differently. Especially when those comments were never said with the same energy while Kobe was still alive and able to respond himself. And that's exactly why this situation exploded so quickly, because it stopped being just another NBA debate and turned into a conversation about timing, respect, and who's willing to say things face to face when legends are still here to answer back.
Now that Kobe isn't here, we want to bring up the times where he wasn't as efficient or he shot long too.
Those words hit directly at Paul Pierce because, over the years, he's repeatedly made comments that many fans feel take shots at Kobe Bryant's legacy from behind a microphone. First, Pierce argued that Pau Gasol deserved the 2010 Finals MVP over Kobe. Then he left Kobe out of his all-time top 5. Later, he claimed that he himself was the best player in the world during Boston's championship run. And eventually, he went even further by saying Kobe was never truly the face of the NBA despite everything Kobe accomplished throughout his career. That's why so many people see a pattern in the comments. To critics, it feels like the same cycle over and over again. Strong opinions delivered years later, long after the rivalry ended and long after Kobe could respond directly himself, and that's exactly why the reaction became so emotional. Because for many fans, this stopped feeling like basketball analysis and started feeling personal.
Now that he's not here, you want to try to erase history.
The reason those arguments never fully stick is because the players who actually competed with and against Kobe Bryant remember exactly what it felt like to face him. And those memories tell a very different story. Because while Paul Pierce was publicly calling himself the best player alive, behind closed doors the league already knew who the real nightmare matchup was. Players talked about Kobe differently. Coaches prepared for him differently. Entire defenses were built around slowing him down, and even then, it usually wasn't enough. That's why, to so many former players, the idea that Kobe wasn't the face of the league or wasn't viewed as the standard during that era just doesn't line up with what they personally experienced on the court.
Then I found out he had gone on like a 40-mile bike ride at like 11 p.m. that night, got in at like 2 a.m., and then he was in the weight room when I got down there at 7:30, so
40 miles on a bike at 11 o'clock at night. Back home by 2 in the morning. Then already in the weight room before most teammates had even opened their eyes. That was the kind of routine Kobe Bryant lived by, and the truth is, very few players in the league were operating on that level of obsession. That's why the people who actually had to guard Kobe tell a completely different story than the one being pushed today. To them, Kobe wasn't just talented, he was relentless. Every matchup felt like going against someone who prepared harder, studied longer, and refused to let anyone outwork him. That's the version of Kobe the league remembers.
You ask anybody that played against him, they all say he was the best player in the league. He was the most terrifying person to guard.
6. Every player who ever stood across from Kobe Bryant tells the same kind of story, and there's a reason for that. Kobe didn't just play against you. He studied you. He memorized your habits, learned your reactions, picked apart your tendencies, and then attacked your weaknesses possession after possession. And the coldest part, sometimes he would tell defenders exactly what he was about to do before he even did it. Then he'd go out and score anyway. That's the level of preparation and control players remember when they talk about Kobe. Not just talent, obsession, detail, and complete understanding of the game.
I still couldn't stop it, and I knew what he was about to do over and over and over again, And that's a part of his greatness, man.
You could study the film, memorize the move, build the perfect defensive scheme, spend an entire week preparing for it, and somehow it still wouldn't matter. That's the kind of player Paul Pierce is trying to downplay, and this is where the story really intensifies, because Kobe Bryant didn't just beat opponents quietly. He let you know exactly what was coming, then made you live through it in real time. He'd call out the spot, predict the shot, attack the matchup he wanted, and then he'd execute it anyway right in front of you. That wasn't just scoring. That was psychological pressure mixed with absolute confidence, and it's why so many players who actually faced Kobe speak about him with a completely different level of respect.
My phone walked past our bench while I was in huddle, said, "You left me too much time." Came out, hit the fucking game winner.
Mid-game, Kobe Bryant would walk past an entire opposing huddle, tell them the game was over, then come back on the next possession and prove it. That Kobe's trash talk always came with proof on the scoreboard. That's the difference many players from that era keep pointing toward. Because to them, Kobe backed up every word with results. Meanwhile, critics feel Paul Pierce's version of the rivalry now mostly lives through podcast takes and debate clips long after the games ended. And that contrast is what makes this whole conversation so intense. But the story takes an even deeper turn after the 2008 NBA Finals. Weeks after the Boston Celtics beat the Los Angeles Lakers in 6 games, Kobe was sitting in a lounge during the 2008 Summer Olympics with members of the women's national team and a newspaper in his hands. Without saying much to anyone around him, he quietly did something that perfectly captured the difference in mentality between him and Pierce, and it revealed exactly how personally Kobe took that loss.
And then we look over and he's tearing out the picture of Paul Pierce. So he cuts it out and he folds it up, he puts it in his pocket, and we're all looking at him, what's going on? He's motivated.
A photo of Paul Pierce's face cut out from a newspaper and folded into Kobe Bryant's pocket. That's how personally Kobe took the 2008 Finals loss. While one side was celebrating the championship, Kobe was already thinking about revenge. And everyone knows how the story continued. 2 years later, Kobe came back and defeated Pierce and the Boston Celtics in Game 7 of the 2010 NBA Finals to capture his 5th championship ring. That's why so many players describe the difference between Kobe and everyone else in a very specific way. Kobe didn't just talk about moments, he obsessed over them, carried them with him, and used them as fuel until he changed the outcome himself. That mentality is what separated him. And it's also why so many former players who lived through both the Michael Jordan era and Kobe's era often speak about the similarities between those two with enormous respect. Because the people who actually shared locker rooms, practices, and playoff battles with Kobe saw firsthand how close his mentality and competitive obsession were to the standard Jordan created. And for many fans, that reality makes Pierce's argument much harder to defend.
When you're on Chicago, I was with the Beatles, I was with Elvis, I was with Michael Jackson. The difference is Michael is tied and Kobe is tied evergreen. It's not that much different.
Robert Horry and John Sally are not talking from the outside looking in. They're speaking as players who actually lived inside championship locker rooms with Kobe Bryant. And Sally's perspective carries even more weight because he also won a title with the Chicago Bulls during the Michael Jordan era. That means he experienced 2 of the most dominant dynasties in basketball history firsthand. So when voices like theirs suggest that the gap between Jordan and Kobe was extremely small, they're not speculating. They're describing what they saw up close in real time. That's why the conversation around Kobe's legacy becomes so intense. Because it directly clashes with public takes like those from Paul Pierce, creating a clear disagreement between former players who are actually in the environment and those offering retrospective opinions. And then there's Scottie Pippen, Jordan's longtime teammate and 6-time champion, who has also spoken about Kobe in a way that places him among the very top tier of competitors he ever saw. For many, That kind of testimony from people inside those dynasties carries far more weight than any outside debate, because it comes from players who witnessed greatness from the inside, not from afar.
When I look at LeBron, he's not what Michael was as a player. He's not even what Kobe Bryant was as a player. So when you talk about trying to compare Michael's instinct, his ability to take over games, his ability to want to have that last shot.
And demoralize you.
And, yes.
And scare the living hell out of you.
LeBron doesn't have that gene.
Right.
Kobe has that gene.
Scottie Pippen has publicly spoken about Kobe Bryant in a way that places him above even LeBron James in certain aspects, pointing specifically to the same kind of relentless killer instinct he once saw while playing alongside Michael Jordan. That mentality, the ability to take over in the biggest moments, is something that can't be measured by stats alone or recreated in highlights. It's something players either have or don't, and that's where the contrast in narratives becomes sharper. Fans often remember moments like Paul Pierce being carried off the court and later turning that incident into part of his own story, while Kobe famously tore his Achilles and still walked off the floor under his own power. Refusing help. One moment became a viral talking point. The other became part of basketball legend. And whether people agree or not, the league has long understood how those moments are remembered differently. What makes the discussion more sensitive is that it's not just about numbers or accolades anymore. It's about what Kobe Bryant represented to an entire generation of fans who grew up trying to copy his mindset, his work ethic, and his approach to competition. That's why comments that challenge that legacy hit so hard, and why Jayson Tatum's reaction stood out so strongly in the first place.
He is the reason why I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, why I chased my dream, because I saw how hard he worked. He was my inspiration and my idol. So somebody that was 3,000 miles away from me inspired me to be who I am.
Miles separate St. Louis from Los Angeles, but that distance didn't stop Jayson Tatum from building his routine around the mentality of Kobe Bryant. Waking up at 5:30 every morning wasn't inspired by talk or commentary. It wasn't shaped by opinions from former players like Paul Pierce. It came from Kobe, the same player whose mindset, work ethic, and relentless approach continue to influence the next generation long after his career ended. And that's exactly why his name keeps coming up in these debates, even when the conversation isn't directly about him.
I take it personal because it's that dude meant everything to me. And this energy wasn't the same when he was here.
That kind of energy says everything. Because when Kobe Bryant heard disrespect, he didn't get into debates or chase arguments. He responded the only way he knew how to on the court. He let his game do the talking, and more often than not, the response was louder than anything he could have said in words.
As soon as I walked on the court, Cole was like, "Oh, that's what we doing, motherfucker?" And didn't say nothing to me the rest of the game.
Silence, followed by dominance on the scoreboard. That was often the pattern Kobe Bryant used to answer criticism. No speeches, no debates, just performance when it mattered most. That's what Jayson Tatum seems to understand, and what Paul Pierce is being accused of overlooking. Because Kobe's legacy isn't just about numbers or efficiency charts, it's about the impact he had on people who watched him, guarded him, and tried to stop him. It's about the standard he set every time he stepped on the floor, especially in the biggest moments.
And he's one of the 3 most influential basketball players of all time. Everybody loved, revered, respected, even from different sports, admired who he was. The year AI won an MVP, he shot 29 shots a game. Yeah. He was shooting that shit every single time. But we all admire his competitiveness, how tough he was, how he got it done, how he was 6'1" and was the most fierce competitor in the world.
Jayson Tatum highlighted what many fans see as a contradiction in how players are judged across eras. For example, Allen Iverson once averaged high shot volume during his MVP season, and at the time it was often praised as leadership, aggression, and carrying a team. But when Kobe Bryant produced similar levels of responsibility on offense, while also winning 5 championships, the narrative sometimes shifted toward criticism instead of praise. That kind of comparison is where debates start to break down, because the same style of play is interpreted differently depending on the outcome. and that's why many former players believe those arguments don't hold up under real competitive pressure. They don't reflect how the game actually feels when you're on the floor trying to guard it. Kobe, meanwhile, approached the game from a mindset focused less on external debates and more on control, competitiveness, and winning possessions when it mattered most.
Failure means it doesn't exist. It's a figment of your imagination. So if you fail on Monday, the only way it's a failure on Monday is if you decide to not progress from that, right? So to me, that's why failure is not existent. Because, if I fail today, okay, I'm going to learn something from that failure and I'm going to try again on Tuesday.
What does failure really mean? It doesn't actually exist on its own. It's more of a mindset than a reality. If something doesn't go right on Monday, it only becomes a failure if you choose to stop there. Otherwise, it's just a moment to learn from. So if something goes wrong today, you take something from it, adjust, and try again tomorrow. That's why, in this view, failure isn't final. It's just part of the process of getting better.
He would test guys in practice.
How would he test them?
Oh, elbowing them, talking to them, telling them they can't guard him. You got this guy out here, and this guy can't hold my jock.
From now on out, every time down the court, I touch the ball. Y'all gonna learn what it's like to play with Kobe Bean fucking Bryant.
How y'all gonna wear these shoes and y'all soft? Ain't what we do here in L.A.
Paul Pierce tries to shrink that mentality down into stats and shooting percentages, but that's not how it ever worked. This is a mindset that didn't even recognize failure as an endpoint. A player like Kobe Bryant treated every setback as something to study, not something to fear. The work didn't stop when practice ended. It often intensified. He was known for extreme routines, relentless conditioning, and pushing even his own teammates in practice. Not to break them, but to see who could handle real pressure before game night ever arrived. He would test guys in practice.
He's running down the court, pats me on the butt and says, "You never should have showed me that step."
Every move learned, studied, and then turned back on you with a smile. That's the kind of pressure Kobe Bryant put on opponents. That level of fear doesn't come from interviews or podcast debates. It comes from a player who could make someone question their entire career after a single night on the court. And that's where the difference shows up between Kobe and the way some people now talk about his legacy. Because what often gets left out is the cost of being Kobe. It wasn't just effort, it was punishment on the body over years. Constant wear and tear, injuries, and a level of physical sacrifice that built up over 2 decades of pushing the game to its limit. Even when he suffered a torn Achilles, Kobe still refused to be carried off. He walked off under his own power, choosing pride and control over anything else. Moments like that became part of how fans remember him, not just for what he did, but how he carried himself through pain. When Kobe Bryant passed away in January 2020, the entire basketball world felt it deeply. And for younger players like Jayson Tatum, who were still early in their careers at the time, that moment left a lasting impact that shaped how they talk about him and why his influence still shows up in their mindset today.
When you're younger, you feel like your idols is like invincible. Yeah. I thought he was invincible. I thought nothing ever bad could happen to him. I remember I went to my room, I broke down crying. It was a real sad, somber day. The game ain't really matter and nobody was really speaking. You could tell. Everybody just felt heavy.
After Kobe Bryant passed, the league went quiet. And in that silence, there was an unspoken understanding his impact on the game wasn't something to be casually reduced or rewritten. For years, that respect largely held, until comments from Paul Pierce reopened the debate. Kobe wasn't just a scorer or a champion, he was a psychological force. A player who changed how opponents approached the game the moment he stepped on the floor. Opponents felt overwhelmed. Teammates were pushed to a higher standard, constantly having to earn his trust and respect. And far away from Los Angeles, a young Jayson Tatum was waking up before sunrise in St. Louis, building his routine around the same mentality Kobe represented, chasing a standard that felt almost unreachable. 5 championships, an MVP, 2 finals MVPs, and a work ethic that made even elite professionals feel like they had more to prove. That's the legacy many feel should be treated with care, not casual criticism from a distance. So when Tatum finally responded to the tone of those remarks, he didn't soften it or avoid it, he called it what he believed it was: cowardly. And that's why this conversation has continued to echo through the basketball world, long after the original comments were made.